Welcome back, everybody. Barbara Lamb has been in the business of searching for truth now for 20 years. Coincidentally, so has the Congress. Personally, I actually also go back 20 years in having the privilege and honor of knowing Barbara and calling her a friend. She stands as a beacon and a bright light for the positive side of things and what can be accomplished when a pure heart looks for some of the truth. And most importantly, of course, once again, she is here today with all of us to share some of that. Welcome, Barbara Lamb.
Hi, Bob. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming back from the lunch. That's great. I had to wrench myself away. I'm very happy to be here and to speak about the crop circles, because the crop circles, I think, are the most incredible gift to humanity. Where they come from exactly, I don't think anyone's pinned that down, but boy, we're having fun trying to figure it out. But you know how the newspapers and news on TV and radio are so often full of these conflicts and horrible things happening and this dark kind of news, which is there, it's true. But the crop circles are something different. And they're beautiful, beautiful, intelligent patterns which are laid down in the fields all over the world. Mostly in England, and that's what I'll be speaking about mostly today. But so many of us feel like, oh, it's another gift. And every year, about, a little later than this, about April, late March or April, those of us enthused in this and involved in this phenomenon think, when's it going to start this year? And even, is it going to start this year? Because, you know, there's no guarantee that crop circles will continue to be made, and as I think about it, given to us. So every year when we hear our first report about a crop circle having appeared in England, yay! You know, my crop circle friends and I call each other up, or did you know that there was one that happened near Windmill Hill or wherever? And then we watch, we wait, we look at the crop circle connector, which is a wonderful reference for you if you don't already know it. It's a website run by two young men in England, and they are just terrific at posting every crop circle that happens in England at any given season. And they also have a large, extensive archive of crop circle pictures from previous years, which you can access if you become a member, a contributing member for a modest fee. Anyway, I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about me than Bob would probably know. I think he said I had 20 years of crop circle research already done, having been inspired by a crop circle at a forum similar to this, although a bit smaller, at a Whole Life Expo in 1990. And when I saw even the notice about it in a program of the lectures forthcoming, I thought, wow, we're being communicated with from somewhere, someone. And my heart flashed, and I've been involved in this phenomenon ever since, and very, very happily, every summer. Now, 19 summers being in there, going into my 20th this year. And while I think of it, I do run crop circle tours, a small tour each summer of 8 people. If any of you are interested in finding out about that, you can find me at my table in the vendor room. So I've given many lectures on this subject, and I'm always happy to share because it is good news. It's sharing something of beauty, mystery, wonder. And those are the kinds of things I like to share about. We just need more of that in the world, in my opinion. And eventually, a few years ago, I wrote a book called Crop Circles Revealed, co-authored by Judith Moore, who's a very, very talented channel and brought in lots of spiritual views and information about the crop circles, the whole phenomenon, and many specific crop circles as well. And then just recently, I became on the faculty of the new online university, International Metaphysical University, and they have, guess what, a department of ufology. So at this online university, people can get an associate degree or a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and eventually in the near future, they'll be offering a doctoral degree in ufology. So I'm their teacher about varieties of extraterrestrial encounters. So if you want to get a degree or just simply take courses, look into that, International Metaphysical University. In my experiencer work, I'm also president of ASSET, which is the Academy of Clinical Close Encounter Therapists. So we all do regressions with people who've had close encounters of many kinds with extraterrestrial beings. And I'm also a board member of JAR, J-A-R, acronym for Journal of Abduction Encounter Research. That's an online journal all about extraterrestrial experiences and that part of the phenomenon. For me, these subjects just really work in so very, very well together. Although we don't know how much of a direct link there is, but there is happening. There's contact in various ways going on in crop circles and also, of course, in the extraterrestrial encounters. So a definition of a crop circle, as you're glancing here and there at the beautiful English countryside, and that's one of the sacred special places right near a carved white horse into the hillside there. And that person happens to be me a few years ago, just exulting in the whole thing, the beauty, the energy of that place, and the crop circles that I was going to go on to see that day. A crop circle, I'm going to give a very simple definition. Most of you probably know it, but some of you may not. And a crop circle is a pattern. It might be a circle, or it might have all kinds of different design elements. And the crop circle is somehow still mysteriously laid down in a field full of a crop. The crops are very typically wheat and barley and oilseed canola and oats, and even nowadays, nowyears, corn, which they call maize in England. And that's a very difficult crop to lay down a crop circle in. So when I say that a crop circle is a design, a pattern, I mean a big one, a big pattern. Some of the long, what we call pictograms, are not just a simple circle, but they might be 1,000 feet long, they might be 1,100 feet, they might be 1,200 feet long. And many of them are actually contained within a circle, and the original ones were all simple but beautifully laid down circles, and that's where the name crop circles came from originally years ago, back in the 1980s. And so these patterns happen usually in the middle of the night, very mysteriously. And some of them have been done during the daytime. And there have been some witnesses to seeing crop circles laid down. For instance, the first witnessing that I ever heard about was that there was a couple walking their dog at the top of a slight slope at the edge of a wheat field. And they looked down over the field and they saw that it looked like a wind or something was riffling down the tops of the wheat, and then suddenly stopped. And it looked like the crop out there was being swirled down, and little bits of the crop were flying up in the air, and it went lower and lower and lower. And then it stopped. They didn't see any object. They didn't see anything except the crop itself. This was daytime, the crop moving. So after it stopped, and they thought, let's go into the field and check that out. then they found that there was a beautifully, perfectly laid, swirled circle there. And that was a crop circle. Another time in the early 1990s, there was a young man riding a bicycle in Glastonbury, very wonderful Isle of Avalon, mysterious place, Merlin and Camelot and so forth. And he saw a field, and he noticed there was a beam of light coming down into the field. And this was late afternoon, there was still daylight, and he followed with his eyes the beam of light, and there was a round disc-shaped silver craft from which the beam was coming down, swirling a crop into a crop circle. And then we know that people have been witnessing balls of light. They're more solid, more rounded looking than the orbs that many of us pick up in our cameras, especially our digital cameras. I mean, they look very three-dimensional, and they just sometimes have been seen in the daytime or nighttime, kind of going along the top of the crop, cruising along, and then dipping down to the soil, and then up again and meandering around. And some of us think that maybe they are checking the conditions of the soil and the crop to see if it would be appropriate for making a crop circle there. And then we certainly have a lot of indication that crop circles, some of them anyway, are made by these balls of light. Usually they're bright white and they're glowing, kind of shining from within, seem to have a lot of energy about them, as well as, of course, mystery. And there is a wonderful short segment of a video taken in 1996 by a young man in England, and he was up on a hillside camping one night. He had his video camera right by him. This was in 1996. And he was sleeping during the night, and suddenly it was just becoming dawn and a little daylight, and he sensed something, and he woke up and instinctively, fortunately, grabbed his video camcorder and pointed it down the hill. And then when he played the footage back, he noticed that a whole new beautiful crop circle had been laid down there by, it certainly seemed, two balls of light, glowing white balls of light. So there is this video footage. I don't have it with me, but I do have some photographs that will show a bit of that. And so he saw two balls of light coming in from behind a hedge, coming across the field, and at that point you could see that a circle was being laid down by another ball of light, and that as these came swooping over that area, you could see 6 laid down arms with a circle at the end being laid down right there before your eyes, and then they flew off behind the hedge, and then another pair of orbs, balls of light, came flying over that area too, fairly low, probably 10, 20 feet above the crop, it appears, and then more extensions of those arms came, and it's a beautifully, perfectly laid down crop circle, lots of good energy, I'll talk about that later, and with another circle and a little point at the end, perfect, everything perfectly spaced, perfectly sized. So that's the one evidence, I think, photographic type of evidence that we have about the actual laying down of a crop circle. But people have reckoned that it may take, partly because of that video, it may take between 5 and 30 seconds, only 5 and 30 seconds for a crop circle to be made. And that could even be a very complex, long crop circle, just from various kinds of witnessings that people have been able to do. And that's remarkable, as you know, who've seen pictures of crop circles and those who might be seeing them for the first time today. So very quick making, perfect. There don't seem to be mistakes. You can't erase it if you lay down the crop and you make a mistake. I mean, it's there, folks, just immediate. The phenomenon began, well, it could even be centuries ago. But we do know that there are a number of reports of crop circles in England and Australia and probably other places in the 1980s and even going back into the 1970s. It actually goes back further than that as well, because certain farmers over there in England say, well, you know, my father used to mention that, gee whiz, that was back in the 1930s. He found a perfectly laid circle on our property. Or even grandfather might report one from the 1920s or the 1910s. We do have a report of one that happened in the 1800s and even in the 1600s. And some people speculate that crop circles may have happened even long before that. There is a theory that even Stonehenge might have been, those ancient megalithic stones might have been laid down where there have been grasses. I don't know if there was a crop way back then, a few thousand years ago, but maybe there was a crop circle laid down in the grasses or whatever was growing there at that time because it was of special energy. So crop circles seem to happen in certain areas, very often near ancient sacred sites where there are the huge megalithic stones and lots of energy there. They happen over ley lines. Ley lines are lines of energy that run through the earth. And in southwest England, which is the part of England where most of the crop circles happen, particularly Wiltshire County, that the energy lines have been walked by people on foot for many, many, many centuries, probably way back before we even know. And they walked on, they were conscious of the energy there, and they may have activated those energy lines by paying attention to them. So crop circles often appear there. We don't see physically the ley lines, but they can be detected in various ways right under the surface of the soil. And there are quite a number of wonderful sacred sites in the whole Wiltshire area, that part of England, with the megalithic stones. Crop circles often, or perhaps always, seem to appear over some kind of underground water. And I think this is a very significant item. That could be that there's geological aquifers under the areas where crop circles appear. And the reason for that, of course, is that there's a lot of rain in England, as I well know. They have beautiful days too. And so the geological aquifers, limestone, sandstone, chalk, it's very porous and it absorbs the abundant English rain and it maintains it, it keeps it there. And then it is able to yield the water very easily as well. And that's important for this phenomenon because, I'll get into a little bit more later, but there seems to be, according to scientists, particularly Dr. Levengood in Michigan, and some scientists, biophysicists also in Holland and Scotland and various other places who have tested thousands and thousands of crop circle plants and tested the control plants taken from the same crop, the same field, but outside of the crop circle. And what they have determined is that there is a spinning vortex of a combination of energies, like a plasma energy vortex, they say, coming from the upper atmosphere, and it comes swirling around like a little whirlwind, comes down to the ground, and it's 800 degrees Fahrenheit in temperature. That's really hot. And yet, the plants that they interact with and lay down are not burned. So how could that be? Here's where the water comes in, the underground water, that the vortex comes down 800 degrees, swirling around, hits the ground, and apparently we think draws up the water, draws up the moisture from under the surface of the soil, creating a steam effect. And that's why the plants can just bend over. And where they bend, and half an inch or an inch above the ground, They don't crack, they don't break, so they keep living, and they live, once they're laid down, right parallel with the ground, inch or so above the ground, and they ripen and they come to full maturity. So for the length of the crop circle, that is the duration of time of the crop circle, which in a sense finishes in a way during harvesting, which usually happens around the end of August. Well, it could happen as early as July if the weather is very dry, but at July, middle August, end of August, even into September a year ago, that happened and crop circles kept appearing. So they're laid down this way, and because of the steam effect also, that means that the stalks can be swirled wonderfully, and they can be swirled into tufts and sculptures and triangles of folded over crops, and these beautiful fountains of wheat showing up from a swirled circle, and precise corners and angles formed so precisely, we think because of this steam effect. So not only are there geological aquifers, but there are underground streams and ponds, maybe even small lakes, and that's all very much part of crop circles successfully being laid down. So the crop circle season usually starts in May of the year. Once in a while, and I'm excited about this, in April. One even happened in 1999 on my birthday, which was April 3rd, and as far as I know, that's the earliest appearance of a crop circle. So I thought, thank you, what a great birthday gift to me. Anyway, they start in April or May, and they continue appearing through June and July and August, and then they don't appear when everything's harvested and there are no further fields to lay a crop circle in. But even when the fields are harvested, the energy, which you'll hear me talk about here and there quite a bit, the energy remains there. So you can even go in the next year when a whole new crop has happened, and you can go with your dowsing rods, your pendulums, your electrostatic voltmeters, your magnetometers, or whatever you might take with you. Or some people just have very sensitive hands, and they can pick up the energy in the palms of their hands. They can detect it, and some can feel it through their whole body. Anyway, they can go into a crop field where a crop circle was in a particular area and go in the next year, or even up to 7, 8, or 9 subsequent years if you go to the exact spot where a crop circle had happened. There's the energy still. So something really remarkable is happening. And exactly when this, what this energy is, that is really difficult to say. There's so many aspects about the crop circle phenomenon that we have lots of ideas about and even develop theories, but it is difficult to know some of these things absolutely for sure in terms of physical evidence, but we know something exceptional is happening here. So another theory that I should mention, it's not my favorite theory, but the theory is that there is, of course, an Air Force base near where many of the crop circles happen, and they have helicopters and they have planes and things, and whenever they hear of a new crop circle having happened in the area, they're the first ones out there. In fact, that aspect of helicopters flying over crop fields is one of the ways in which we know that there's a new crop circle there. Let's just, where's the helicopter? Oh, what field would that be under where it is? And then we can go driving over there and actually find the new crop circle. So one of the theories is that there is beam technology from the Air Force or one of those bases. One man from England told me in very uncertain terms, he said, oh, I know what crop circles are. They're all made by beam, let's see, Mosbar beam technology from the Air Force. I had never heard of Mosbar beam technology, but I've kind of tried to find out about that since then, and they do have such a thing. So, you know, it would be very easy, wouldn't it, to think that somebody behind a computer somewhere in the area could somehow be connecting with some sort of beam technology, projecting out a pattern into a field, and because of the template on the computer could be laying down crop circles. I personally don't think that's true, but it's a theory that needs to be considered, certainly. Genuine versus hoaxed crop circles. That is such a major issue. It actually is for all of us, because whenever we go into a crop circle, we're trying to feel, measure, think, get down on our knees, investigate, you know, if this looks like it's a man-made crop circle or a genuine one. Now, by genuine, I mean made by the unknown, mysterious, and I think wonderful phenomenon. So genuine ones have a lot of energy. And we can go in there, as I mentioned briefly, with dowsing rods. I take my dowsing rods into every single crop circle I ever visit. And if it's a genuine one by the mysterious source, and there is increased energy there, those dowsing rods would start out parallel as I'm walking along the tractor track, or they call them tramway lines, toward the crop circle in the field. They just stay parallel, nothing, no change of energy, everything's fine. But even if I just step into a genuine crop circle, those dowsing rods swing open. And when I go to the most energized part, which is often a swirled section in the crop circle, they open up even more. They swing right around and hit me in the back, and that's fine, they don't hurt. And people with pendulums, it's the same thing. Walk along a tractor track, nothing, it's plumb, like a plumb line. And then when they step into a crop circle, it might start swirling a bit, and in the very energized places, that little bobble on the pendulum is swinging around like mad. One of the photographers did that in one crop circle a few years ago, and the pendulum swung around so rapidly, so energetically, that it broke the chain. It flung off into the surrounding crop outside the crop circle. It was hard for her to even find it. But then some people will go in with a little instrument called an electrostatic voltmeter, and it has a dial on it, and it measures if there's energy or not. The needle doesn't do anything if it's flat, unenergized, i.e. man-made. Or if it's genuine, then it starts fluctuating, and it will kind of give a reading about how much of an increase of energy there is in that particular crop circle. And people go with magnetometers. People go with compasses. You probably heard some of these stories, some of you. And the compass, the needle will just go flinging around, whizzing around and back and forth, and then eventually it will stop. That is, if this is a genuine crop circle, it will stop. And instead of pointing to true north, which it says on the dial, the residents and all of us who notice the sun and where north is and so forth, it may be pointing due east or southwest. In other words, it's off. It's affected by the energies. And cameras are very often affected. They will just stop running any kind of electronic instrumentation, including cell phones and Blackberries and all of these things that we might take in their cameras, video cams. They may just stop working while they're in the crop circle. Fortunately, in most cases, they're not ruined. And if you go back out to your car, drive a little bit down the road, they'll start working again. So certainly there is some kind of energetic effect here that can affect our equipment. So I'm going to be showing you some stalks that have been affected and some stalks that haven't. So I will just briefly mention right now that, of course, the genuine crop circles have the stems that are bent over and they're not broken and they keep growing and ripening. And genuine ones have swollen nodes. Plants crop plants grow in little sections, and they have a little growth node like we have knuckles in our hands, in our fingers. And the growth nodes will, in a genuine one, because of all this high heat coming down, they very often get swollen. And sometimes they get even more swollen, and a hole is blown in the growth node. And that, we think, is because there's been so much heat that's come down to the plants and then drawing up the water, creating the heat and the steam effect, and that it has to escape from the plants. And so it's like it explodes a little hole out of the node, and then the excess heat can escape. We also see very often the skin of a stalk of wheat or barley or whatever is peeled off or peeled partly away from the rest of the stalk. We also see seed heads that are dwarfed and kind of misshapen a little bit. So you can picture a sunflower seed heart about that size. But instead of being a nice little oval seed, if it's been affected by this phenomenon, they'll be kind of a little wonky looking, a little warped, not as pretty. But as I'll show you, those seeds are very good seeds. They grow wonderfully when planted somewhere else. So we have the increased energy in the genuine crop circles. There's a change of magnetics. This has been studied and researched by many. And there's even microwave energy that can be detected, but only in the first, say, 10 or 15 minutes after a new crop circle appears. So most of us don't get there that soon. We might get there a couple of hours later if we're lucky. And then there are soil changes, a number of soil changes. So things really are happening. And with the genuine ones, you'll see these swirls and nests and sculptures and just amazing features. So I'm going to just start in now with some slides. We had that one of many, many, many views of beautiful England. Here's a depiction of a vortex of energy. I hope you can see it. It's kind of faint. And there are little sparkles of light, like little balls of light. This is according to the Dr. Levengood biophysical laboratory analyst theory about the vortex of energy coming down, hitting the earth, and as you can see at the bottom there, swirling the crop circle. Whoops, oh my goodness. Okay. And this is one of the sacred sites that crop circles often appear in, or really near. This is Silbury Hill. It's very ancient. I'm not sure that anybody knows exactly when it was built, of chalk blocks and then filled in with the earth and grass eventually many, many, many centuries ago, having been grown on it. And it has crystals in the middle. It's been excavated. And it's Europe's largest pyramid. And of course, it's round, it's conical. And many wonderful things have happened on Silbury Hill, including Ron Russell, having talked, he's been a speaker here from Colorado, and he met a young couple who were camping, sleeping out on top of Silbury Hill one night several years ago in the 1990s, and they saw, and he believed them, he interviewed them at length, they saw a beautiful lighted round disc-shaped craft hovering over them and over Silbury Hill. And it was shining light down on them. They didn't know what to think. There they were, just in sleeping bags out in the open. And then it flew to the side. It landed little beings that sound like little gray beings from the description, got out, and they had some lighting instrument, and there were about 4 or 5 of them, I think, and they kind of drew a grid with light, crosshatch, in the field right next to Silbury Hill. And we don't know what that was. And they got back in the craft and they flew away. And other people have seen UFOs right over Silbury Hill. And several years ago, in May, of that year, a number of witnesses just driving by in the nighttime reported seeing a UFO right over the top of Silbury Hill. And then the very next day, somebody climbed up there and there was a huge hole all the way down to the bottom, right down to the bottom earth, that had been excavated. Like there wasn't any soil piled up in there. Just a big round hole, probably about 10 feet diameter, and no soil left. It was gone, as if that UFO had made the hole and for some reason taken the soil with them. So all kinds of interesting things go on. We have beautiful poppies in the foreground, as you can see. I'm going to show you a lot of crop circle symbols because there are so many. There are thousands and thousands of symbols from crop circles. And I will say too, because I think I forgot to, is that the crop circle phenomenon is really worldwide. There are 48 countries that I know of, and I'm only just one person looking into this, and there probably are many more countries that have had crop circles, but the people in those rural areas probably don't know what they are or whom to report it to. So we can just imagine that there are many more. There must be at least 12,000 crop circles that we do specifically know about by now, and probably many, many more. I'm going back to the beginning, sort of the really elaborate, complex patterns. This is 1990, and this particular pattern is one of a series of patterns which we call the Gaia patterns, Mother Earth patterns. And you can see in certain places that there are carvings, very, very ancient carvings, England and Ireland, Scotland, and many other places, of the Gaia symbol. The ancient people were so much in touch with the earth, so much more than we are, and they honored the earth as mother, as Gaia. And how lovely that crop circles of that type, that kind of symbol, reminding us of Mother Earth and the preciousness of Earth. And of course, they actually happen on the earth. And this one is one of those ancient patterns, carved, but yet here in a crop circle. And this one, researchers have said, depicts the solar logos pattern from extremely ancient times. And another Gaia pattern, this 1990 also. And these begin to be quite long now. This is probably about 900 feet long. And again, made very quickly. And another one of that type. And we thought it was quite remarkable when the straight lines began to appear, these bars, as well as the circles and the rings. And this one, a little bit faint to see, I hope you can. It's like a very ancient key. And the speculation has been that this might be an ancient symbol for the key to life, or the key to other dimensions, or the key to immortality or eternity. Anyway, it's a very wonderful, ancient, auspicious symbol. In 1991, that was a banner year with many amazing patterns having started. And this one has been thought of, anyway, as DNA. DNA with some breaks in it. You can see the line isn't totally continuous. So maybe we think we're being fed some information here and there about DNA, and maybe that our DNA could be in some trouble. That's one of the theories. And that whatever this intelligence is that seems to be coming from somewhere else and making the crop circles is bringing certain things to our attention. Particularly in 1991, the spraying of crops became increased and more intense. And then genetically modified foods. Now, is that doing something to break our chain of DNA or some of our very basic structure? And in 1992, we had this is another very ancient symbol called the Great turning. And ancient people used to have this pattern, and they thought that the different features along the way on the ring are showing that the soul comes into human life through one of those portals and continues on through the wheel of life and eventually enters the spirit world, leaves the physical life and goes into the spirit world. And in the middle, I hope I can use this. Okay, good. In the middle, that symbol, right in the very center, that is supposed to be the symbol of the Godhead, God. 1993, this was the most elaborate symbol of that year. It's called the Bythorn Mandala. Bythorn because it was near a town called Bythorn. And this is a wonderful depiction of some complex geometries, as you can see. There are triangles, there are stars, there are circles, there are rings, and even toward the edge, we think that these might be petals. Petals like the lotus symbol. 1994, this is called the Avebury Web, and it appeared in 2 nights. The first night I went into it in the dark, the day that it had appeared, and I'm not finding my pointer, but anyway, the middle 2 or 3 rings, that happened in the middle of one night, and then the next night, or the next day actually, I went back, and in the middle of that night in between, the rest of the pattern had been laid down, full of energy, beautiful, and people immediately said, oh, maybe that's the World Wide Web. 1994, and maybe other people have said maybe it is grandmother's spider, one of the indigenous cultures' symbols for grandmother spider who weaves the earth and all life forms and all of reality, weaves that all together. Beautiful idea. And this crop circle, the Avebury Web, happened to be placed right next to, you can just see part of it, the top and the bottom, of the Avebury stone circle. Very ancient megalithic stones, one of the most wonderful sacred sites that there is actually in England. And then we just went on. Every year it seemed to be some symbol that we could recognize, as well as many symbols that we might not recognize. But here we have a depiction, this was in Hampshire County, of the Maltese cross. And the laid down wheat in all of these is the lighter part in each case, like here. And the darker part, and that's true of all of these pictures, the darker part is looking down from an airplane or a helicopter or a microlight, taking a picture, and you see in the darker part the top of the crop, looking down at the heads of the wheat in this case. And, oh dear. And I want to point out that in areas, these lighter areas like this, that the wheat was laid down like this, and then like this. In other words, these arcs, these beautiful, beautiful, oh dear, sorry, beautiful arcs, all the way to where the crop is still standing. I mean, impeccable, perfect, no overlapping, no strands going wonky. They were beautiful and parallel. 1994, we also had this infinity symbol, Möbius strip, or infinity symbols. It seemed like our attention kept being drawn outwards in many cases, out into space, into the cosmos. And then on the other hand, we had symbols like this. This looks like a mine, an underwater mine. So what are they telling us about us? We have this spiritual nature, we have cooperation, we have beauty, we also have war. We have destructive things. And of course, the pyramid and the rays of the sun behind there, very ancient, of course. 1995, we had this one. Now, people have said, who know more about this than I do, that this looks like energy running around the tip of a cathode. That's one of many theories, and some of you might be sitting there thinking, oh, that reminds me of such and such, you know, and so it's interesting to see what people theorize. We've had a lot of patterns where there are stars, in this case, a 5-pointed star, and even in the middle, you see there's a 5-pointed star, and then these other little petal features. And the geometries, there's geometry right there in the center, as well as in the star. Now this one is one of my personal favorites from all of the years. The darker part in the center, sort of radiating out from the lighter center, is full of tiny, tiny little lines. Maybe some of you can see them, just tiny lines in kind of a crosshatch pattern. Now, it's been thought that this is telling about energies. You hear about, some of you, the photon energies coming to the Earth, the photon belt, the photon energies, the speeding up of energies, the speeding up of time, how we're getting so many more energy emissions from the center of the galaxy. Probably all of you have heard at least some of those theories. And it could be, possibly, that this is showing all this energy coming down, and certain points, oh dear, certain points on the Earth, like this light point that I'm pointing to, or was, where they're like shafts of light coming down into the Earth. Now, Judith Moore, my co-author of Crop Circles Revealed, who did wonderful channeling from a 13th century being, I don't mean 13th century, 13th dimensional being, that's a difference there. And that being said that in this particular crop circle, that there are shafts of light coming down at each of these light points and striking down, all of these, striking down into the Earth and connecting with the core of the Earth. In other words, penetrating through the whole Earth and out the other side as these magnificent, very upgrading, higher consciousness energies are coming to us. Then we have something else looking like it's striking, it's coming down. And this is unusual, isn't it, that we have a triangle formation. You can see why some people call the whole phenomenon the crop formation phenomenon instead of the crop circles, because they're not certainly all circles. In ancient England and the British Isles and a lot of Europe, there was the symbol of the Celtic cross in many, many different depictions. And we've had several over the years crop circles in the form of a Celtic cross, particularly in the 1980s, all different proportions, different ratios of the size of the satellite circles and the main circle, but here's just one of the more recent ones in the last few years. Then look at the symbol down near the bottom here in the yellow crop. That is the oilseed canola crop. And it always blooms in the spring with the most beautiful yellow blossoms. They're just gorgeous, particularly compared to the green fields next to it. So this one, as you can see, is placed near Silbury Hill, and green crop next to that. I'm sorry about this. I'm just not used to this particular remote clicker. But so here it is. Now this is a very, very ancient symbol from the early May spring celebration that the ancient people used to do every year. It's kind of a May Day type of thing. It was called the Beltane celebration. And the ancient people from England used to walk over the hillsides, beautiful, curvy, undulating hills, and then come to Silbury Hill and have a pagan ritual, which was very, very meaningful to them, wakening the spring, the rebirth of life, rebirth of plants and flowers and vegetables and and everything, a very special time. Now we also have symbols that are very familiar, like on the left, the heart. And there was actually a wedding that happened in that heart. And then over to the right, something very, very different. A square full of perfect squares. Now we think of crop circles being laid down and swirled. Well, that obviously didn't happen over there in these squares, because they actually are squares. So there's kind of a crosshatch pattern of the wheat having been laid down there. Another view of the heart. And then the mandala. Lots of you will recognize this particular kind of symbol from the eastern part of the world. And another one, this one just appeared last year, and again, in a very sacred area, West Kennet, Long Barrow area, we have a double mandala here. Boy, was the energy nice in that. And another ancient symbol, Vesica Piscis, where two circles actually overlap, and they form that Vesica Piscis shape, an opening. And you often see in medieval paintings, and even probably contemporary ones, where the Christ figure is coming through that opening where the two circles unite. It's a very sacred space. It's like a portal into spirituality. And the flower of life. Those of you who are familiar with the work of Drunvalo Melchizedek know that that's a very auspicious symbol, universal flower of life, the pattern of life, and that has shown up in a couple of crop circles during the years. 1997, the double helix DNA. What a beautiful crop circle that was. What are they trying to tell us? And then just another depiction of it, different coloring of the double helix DNA. And then in Korea, a year ago, 2008, this crop circle appeared, this beautiful, complex crop circle reminiscent of the double helix DNA. And this seems to be a moon cycle depiction, with the smaller ones being the new moon and the larger ones building up to the full moon. There are quite a number of crop circles that have moon cycles and sun cycles in them. And then this, the Kabbalah, the tree of life. And this again is in that yellow crop, the oilseed canola crop, which they call rapeseed. This crop, it has thick, very hard stems. And if you would take one and try to break it, you would find that, I mean, if you just took one that was not in a crop circle and you tried to break it, it would just splinter and totally crack. But in crop circles like this, there's no cracking where the stem is bent over. And that's remarkable. That really shows that there is some other kind of remarkable energy going on. And then the menorah. And even the little oil lamp up at the top. You can't see that terribly well, but it is definitely there. And then this one. This is one of my favorites too. It looks to some of us to be an angel. And the angel is just radiating there. It's as if the angel is just spreading her wings and embracing us and shining down on us, blessing us, wishing us well. At least that's the take that I and many others have. And then that angel and this crop circle were on opposite sides of a hill up in the area of Cambridge here, where there are not usually crop circles. And the hill, it was called Gog Magog Hill. For some of you, that will register from ancient biblical times. So on the upper left there, we have a maze, and then a beautiful series of not exactly rings, but squares there on the bottom. And these two crop circles were so energized that there was a photograph that I have and couldn't find for this lecture. It just shows a big blast of light in it, in one of the laid down rings on the lower left. And then we have the goddess symbol, 2008. Very simple, very beautiful. Some of us here have been in that crop circle together. And then that's reminiscent, you see, of some very, very ancient artifacts that have been found with that same kind of goddess symbol. And this one, the moon goddess symbol from long, long ago. And then the wings of Isis, or one of the other Egyptian gods, and the sun god Ra in the center circle there. And this too was very close to, next to Silbury Hill. And then we have this beautiful pendulum, movement, pendulum, tone, striking notes. One of the theories about crop circles is that they might be made by tones, by sounds, just like Professor Emoto from Japan has found that sounds, words, tones, chanting can actually make patterns in the crystals of the molecules of water. And Hans Jenny in Switzerland did many experiments where sound was put over a tray of sand, and it would form the sand, or talcum powder in some cases, into beautiful geometric patterns. So sound, I think we're being given the reminder to look at that as a creator of many patterns. And then we had this beautiful one. This was very near Stonehenge, and we just refer to it as the rhythms, but maybe this is how life goes, and it unfurls, it goes in different directions. This was an impeccably beautiful one, and you can see in the upper area there, outside of where the ribbons are, is kind of a funny little greenish bit there. That is a tumulus. A tumulus is something I love. I fell in love with tumuli years ago. It's a round hill. It reminds me of a UFO shape landed on the ground. And they have megalithic stones in them. Some people say, oh yeah, they're just ancient burial mounds. And others of us think, no, these were very special chambers where people used to go between the megalithic stones. There'd be some verticals and a horizontal, a lintel, and that they would have their sacred ceremonies, their sacred rites, their meditations, their communication with their ancestors, we think. We can't ask them. But this was laid down between about 6 different tumuli, and yet it was laid down so impeccably that it didn't even bump into any of the tumuli. This beautiful pattern in 2000 called the basket. There's only one photograph in the world taken of this crop circle because the farmer got out there so early and discovered it on his land, and he took his mower and he just plowed through it. But luckily, a young man from Germany was able to be up in an airplane and flew over it serendipitously and took the one photo. And a few people heard about it early enough to rush in and take some ground shots. But look at the crosshatch pattern between the circles. And the circles are raised and each one is swirled differently. But that basket weave, that's the first time in the year 2000 that we ever saw a basket weave. And then we've got this formation, which reminds some of us of music. This happened in the famous Eastfield, Alton Barnes, Wiltshire. As many, many beautiful patterns have happened. And we have a nautilus pattern. And you might be able to see in the distance off there, way up in the hill, there's a chalk white horse, one of the 7 in Wiltshire that have been carved into these wonderful hills. But the nautilus, that has a lot to do with Fibonacci spirals, that whole unfurling of life. And this one, now if you look at it from this particular angle, you might not recognize it so much, but just look at the patterning, look at the detail, and then, right side up, so to speak, here it is, the most beautiful butterfly, symbol of transformation, symbol of life having evolved from something else and transforming into something yet again something more spiritual. This had extremely powerful energy in this pattern. And here's just a ground detail. You can see the laid down part, which is lighter, and the darker part, which are the standing areas, the laid down. The narrow little pieces left standing, you can see them going off into the distance here a bit. Impeccable. And another one, this is not the butterfly, but a year later, this one, and it reminds us of something flying along, doesn't it look like that? And reminds us of a headdress, some people have said, like a Native American glorious headdress. Frankly, it strikes me as a depiction of an angel with the wings, the feathers, but nevertheless, it's great. And the big hill in the background, well, you can just see the top of the hill and some of the sides. That's the Uffington Hill, which has an ancient white horse from way, way back. Here are some ground details of that one. Another pyramid, more sun. And this one is thought to be an Aztec sunstone. Now, this was the first in a series of patterns that seem to be depicting the Mesoamerican culture and leading up to 2012. So where they have the Aztec, and here is a cross. This was done in a corn crop. And those stalks are even bigger, thicker, tougher, harder to bend than the oilseed canola. And yet, this pattern was laid down impeccably well without any breaking of the crop. And then a more Christian cross. Beautiful, beautiful pattern. Very much like the Celtic cross. So we'll just take a look at that again with the circle forms in the middle, the forearms extending, the vertical, and here very similar in many ways to the ancient Celtic cross, which you see in all of the old cemeteries and many other places in England. And then in the early 2000s, 2005 actually, this was on top of a big, beautiful hill, a field right across the road from Silbury Hill. And when this pattern began, people said, oh my goodness, okay, 2005, we're not that far from 2012. This is all Mayan detail. I thought at first it was classical Greek, but I looked it up. No, it's Mayan, actually. Woohoo! And beautiful, beautiful swirls, beautiful details. People thinking, you know, maybe we're being prepared that there possibly are large changes coming in the year 2012, and we're being reminded of that, prepared for that. And then another one, a couple of years later, at a different location, indications of Mayan as well. And you've got those Mayan forms around the outside there. And the half circle in the middle, which you can see is kind of like a crescent half circle. I've been told that that represents day 0 of things really speeding up to 2012, to December 21st. And this is a time the Pleiades and the Sun and the Earth will be joined together on May 20th, 2012. And on June 6th, according to predictions, that will be the return of Quetzalcoatl, the Messiah, Kulkulkan. Something important will happen. All of this leading up to December 21st, 2012. And we will see more of that. Just look at the beautiful details now, how those curvy parts have been shaped, and that lovely crescent in the middle. And here's a Mayan carving with some of the very same similar elements in it. It's a little hard to see maybe from that distance, but notice the features around the edge and how they are very much like that Mayan motif. And yet another Mayan motif, and I'm showing the center of it to show those Mayan symbols around the side, and the beautiful sculptural tufts left in the middle, and the way that the crop has been swirled to accommodate those shapes around those tufts. And 2009, on the very same hill across from Silbury Hill, we had this, and many people think this is a Mayan pattern, or certainly designed on that motif, and we've been calling this the Mayan headdress pattern. Beautifully executed, and again with that Mayan glyph pattern around the outside, and the wings and the features coming out. The wings are feathers. And then, about 3 years ago, actually 2003, we had this symbol near that Uffington white horse on the hill. And this has been known to be a Lamat symbol, which is Mayan, and it's been translated as meaning portents of good hope. Also translated as living in the heart with compassion. So you can see why some of the ground details here, why I think these are messages of very good hope. And then look at this, about 3 years ago, looking like the towers now. Does this have anything to do with 9/11, do you think? The 9/11 attacks, who knows? But very three-dimensional looking, very striking. And closer to the ground here, beautifully, beautifully laid, some of the ground details. Music symbol. And another music symbol, at least it reminds us of music. Again, music, tone, sound, creation, probably even healing. And in 80808, a couple of years ago, the 8 appeared. How perfect. And this was very expected. And those of us who were there were saying, what's going to happen? We just know something's going to happen in terms of a crop circle on 80808, and indeed it did. And it was huge, and it was a beauty. Here's a closer view of the crossover points. Beautifully, beautifully laid. And you see there's so many people who apply their areas of knowledge and research into these crop circles. And so on the left up there, the upper left, the smaller circles, we have the new moon. And then the moon gets larger and larger and larger as we see it, and culminating in the full moon, and then another moon cycle, new, moving around to full as well. Well, this is one of the ways that we visit crop circles, and those of you who are interested in going into crop circles need to know that sometimes we have to climb over gates. Here we are, or through gates, or sometimes under a gate. And there are many ways that we do that. And it's fun, so we wear old clothes that we don't mind if they get caught on barbed wire or splinters in them. But very important now are the plant anomalies. Here is a beautiful example of a bent stalk without any breaking. So you can see that it is a perfect bend. This part came out of the roots. You can see a little, oh dear, that is a very sensitive thing. Sorry. And I'll just describe it visually. Anyway, a beautiful, beautiful bent stalk that had been upside down and then was bent without any damage, any breaking. And you can see that these stalks in the foreground have another kind of bending. They bend at the growth node without any damaging. And here are pictures of plants that were in a genuine crop circle where the energy poured in. You've got the darker areas in the middle there, the nodes, and holes blown in the nodes for that excess heat to escape. And here again we have blown nodes. Sometimes they get a little bit curved like the two on the left, and then the heat sometimes sears them or burns them slightly as they come out like the two near the right there. just to show you that this phenomenon can happen in other media as well, this is a group of trees that was bent over. I wouldn't say that they were swirled in a perfect circle, but they did form kind of a rough circular pattern bent over, presumably by that kind of energy. And here's some more bending toward the forward here of the picture. And then very strange anomalies. Now this was a head of wheat that would stand straight up, and look what's happened because of that energy. And this one, really affected. Now these are, you're looking down at the ground, you're seeing in the middle some tan skin that had pulled away from the stalks, and sort of wrapped around these right here. You see, wrapped around in almost, we could call them bundles of stalks. Now that doesn't happen if you're out there with a board and a chain, you know, tromping down crops as in the man-made ones. So on the left, we've got the regular stalks. This is how they normally look as you're going with the growth node, and then the holes blown out from the inside to let the excess heat escape. And I love this one. Look at the curvy way. That should be straight up and down, and it isn't. It's been curved in a crop circle field in the oilseed canola. Now this is very important because if you take seeds from a genuine crop circle and you plant them in a garden the next year, or it could even be that year, and so you see the ones on the left have grown actually very fast, very strong, very sturdy, abundant. The ones in the middle were taken from a genuine crop circle, but toward the edge of the crop circle where the energy isn't as intense. So the ones on the left were taken from the center of the crop circle, very intense energy, and over here taken from near the edge of the crop circle. And then these over on the right were taken from outside of the crop circle. And this is true for at least 8 generations that I know of, that the seed heads taken from these continue to grow like this. The ones from the center of the genuine circle, stronger, faster, hardier. From the edge of the circle, next in terms of success, and controlled plants growing the slowest. Here's another fun activity we do in crop circles, climbing over barbed wire. Valia Roseman is right here in the white clothes. She's here at this Congress. We've done many a crop circle together. Complex geometries. I think the most beautiful one that, and this is the one that enticed me to not only be in crop circles, but to stay in it for the rest of my life. Barbary Castle, 1991. And this beautiful geometric pattern, so much could be seen about it, but you can see the triangles, you can see the circles, the straight lines. Each of the end features has different dynamics in it. Here's another drawing to see it more clearly. Many people have spent winters analyzing the exquisite geometries of this crop circle, and many people have recognized this as a depiction of ancient alchemical symbols. And this one, like string art. This one is under Clay Hill, which was a UFO hotspot in the 1960s and early 70s. But look at the geometric pattern so perfectly in the center. And then a crop circle that's not a circle at all. It's a triangle. And when you see that the way that it was laid down is very, very linear from one edge, the left edge, up to the right, and yet there are the little swirled circles. And this one, Buckminster Fuller used to talk about this kind of design, the vector equilibrium. This appeared with squares, and doesn't it have a rather three-dimensional looking effect as if coming up in the center. And this one, stars imposed upon other stars, circles, rings, just great geometries. This is a more simple one, beautifully, beautifully executed. And this one in 1999, 9 points of the star and 9 crescents swirling in the center. People have said, oh my goodness, 9, the number of transformation, the end of the 1990s, the beginning of the whole new 2000s. How appropriate. And this one, this is a Sierpinski gasket in geometry. And if that design were cut out of paper and folded around, it would make a perfect hexagram, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hexagram, 6-sided feature. And the interweaving of rings or crescents, masterfully, beautifully. And these tiny lines, like little energy lines radiating out from the center, those lines radiating out in all directions were so small that I didn't even want to walk through them with a woman's walking shoe on. I didn't want to tromp down any of the crop at the side. Now this picture is the center of that one with an actual deer in there. And that deer somehow walked one of those tiny little pathways from the edge of the crop circle to munch on the wheat in the middle. And then we get so many complex geometries. I couldn't possibly show all of this type, and they're all different from each other. Look at the center and those tiny little rays coming out. By the way, I haven't pointed out, but that there are in all of these pictures, if I can do this with the pointer, there are lines like that, and they are the tractor tracks, or tramway lines, as they call them. So you'll see them running through all of the pictures. Here's another view of it with a little anomaly, if you can just see that in the background there, a little misty anomaly coming up from the edge of the hill. And another pattern. I mean, we have pattern after pattern after pattern with these incredible geometries and done so impeccably. And then we have this type geometrical pattern, very different, squares and more. And each one has a different number of stars, and numerologists attribute meaning to the different numbers that are featured in these geometric crop circles. And look at the complexity of that. And this one, another complex geometry with the triangle in the middle. All of these pictures were taken at slightly an angle from above, because when you're in an airplane or a helicopter or a microlight, the floor is under you. So even if you're right over the center of the crop circle, you can't take the picture unless you're a little bit to the side of it. But this crop circle had very interesting land features, ground details. Like this almost looks like an octopus in 3D standing up there in the middle. And this one, like a little hut made of wheat that is made into this form, a hollow on the inside. More complex geometry and some ground details of that. And this, even more complex. This is like halves of cubes in some of these forms. And this one, very similar to the Mayan feature, the Mayan glyph that we've been seeing, but these squares and even triangles formed together. And this one from a couple of years ago is very interesting. Some people look at that and say, oh, this is a depiction of the space-time slippage that is happening and that happens for some people. Everything not quite matching, and yet it's all a very coordinated, dynamic pattern. And this one, 2008, cubes, perfect looking cubes. They didn't really stand up like a cube, but they looked like it. And then all the little stars and triangles radiating from that. And this one, early in the season, 2008, this is the perfect symbol of pi, P-I, geometric pi, the first 10 digits of pi. That could be a whole lecture of its own, but absolutely perfect. And here we go under barbed wire to get into a crop circle field. That's Valia again. And then fractals. So we had complex geometries, and through the years we've had occasionally these wonderful fractals. And a fractal is a form, a pattern that could be repeated again and again and again. It could be repeated until infinity. And in this year that this one was done, 1991, a Professor Benoit Mandelbrot, who was a professor of physics at Princeton, had been lecturing at the University of Cambridge in England. And just after he left, he had introduced the idea of the Mandelbrot basic pattern, which is this. And then he had to leave to go back to Princeton, but just after he left, this beautiful Mandelbrot pattern appeared in the field. And then we have this fractal, the Julia set, named by Professor Julia. And this is a Fibonacci spiral. Those spirals have shown up here and there in crop circles, absolutely perfect. And here it is when at the top of the screen you see Stonehenge. It was right across major highway from Stonehenge. And this one appeared during the daytime, during a 35-minute period of time, late afternoon. Pilot flew over, searched the fields. He was crop circle enthusiast, no crop circle there, dropped off his passenger, flew back 35 minutes later, and there it was, having been made in the day, and beautiful, perfect, and loads of people already in it. I mean, how amazing. And then 2 weeks later, at another field, in a different part of Wiltshire County, was this triple Julia. I mean, I think this is fantastic. And every single circle is swirled differently from each other and has a different feature in the center. Beautiful energy. This is a Koch fractal, K-O-C-H, another geometer. And this pattern could be added onto the same form again and again to infinity, and a different kind of Koch fractal in another field, and all the little circles around every circle swirl differently, different center again. This pattern, each one of the features there on the outer edge could be divided up and added to in that way, and still another one with a Koch standing center, different year, and this one, the Koch fractal star. And each one of the little triangles on the outside edge could be added to with another triangle, which could be added to triangles on each side, and so on. If you had enough room and you wanted to, you could repeat that to infinity. And that pattern we've just seen, that Koch fractal star, is right near Silbury Hill. And then a couple of weeks after that, the Koch fractal was repeated in a different field, but this time with a standing center, which is also a Koch fractal. And yet another one, another year, another place. So it seems like we're being reminded again and again and again about some of these things, the geometries, the implications, the infinity. This is a Koch fractal as well. And this one, you see, they come in different shapes, different forms. And then this one was followed by this one, which is the same pattern except reverse. So here we've got more of the center and the fractal parts, fractal around the edge, and here it's just highlighted very differently. And this one too, I think, looks rather three-dimensional, coming up in the middle, rather like looking down on a pyramid, and each one of those triangles or squares, however you want to see them at the corner, could be added to again and again. And this pattern, beautiful, swirling, impeccable, incredible details, which could be repeated to infinity. And yet, another fractal, another year. Amazing when they do them. And this one, 2001, the Catherine wheel, it's often referred to, 409 circles, 878 feet diameter, appeared overnight. A man was camping on that hill, Milk Hill, and it was a pouring rainstorm, deluging. He was in a little tent, fortunately. He kept opening the flap. Oh no, I don't dare go out. He wanted to see if something would happen there in any of those fields. In the daylight, the rain stopped, he got out. He and early researchers found out about it and came. There were no footprints whatsoever, no indication that human beings had been there. Another view of the beautiful English countryside. Features in space. A lot of crop circles have addressed that. So 1995, we have the Earth's magnetic fields shrinking the Van Allen belt, and it was technically actually shrinking. And then 1995, wow, this really hit us between the eyes, because this shows our solar system with the asteroid belt around the edge, the outside, and on the third ring from the sun being in the middle, should be the Earth, but the Earth is missing in this crop circle. So what are we being told? That one really took us about. And this is the solar system again, but this time with the asteroid belt around it. Those other lines, by the way, running in are just foot tracks where people have cut across the field and it plows down the wheat and it leaves an ugly trail like that. So that shouldn't be part of the pattern. And here is a drawn depiction of a planet and the asteroid belt going around it. And then we have rings, a number of crop circles of rings looking like the Milky Way galaxy. And here's a spinning galaxy. And this actually is, it's been researched, is the way that the planets will be lining up sometime in the future. Here's that Milky Way galaxy that goes with the rings, and that triple Julia, and a galaxy spinning actually out there in space. And this one, I love this. This is the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades in 1994. Those 7 planets. Ground detail. See the details, the rings standing up from the laid down crop, and 2 more people climbing over barbed wire to get into the crop circle. Balls of light and anomalies. This anomaly is wonderful. During the laying down of a crop circle right near Silbury Hill, these 2 flies, innocently just munching on the upright wheat, got fused by the heat, charred through and fused onto this head of the wheat. And then we have this beautiful ball of light, this orb by a field and a hill, a crop circle, and some in the distance there, perhaps the tanner area, the lighter area there, that's a crop circle, and here are balls of light flying around, and another one much closer to the ground. And this man, if you look down by his shoes, his left shoe, you can see a ball of light. He didn't know it was there. He just had his friend take a picture, and there it is, enlarged a bit, a beautiful orb right there. And then over the field, loads of these orbs, balls of light. And this one is a mysterious little streak of light. When I took that picture, I was taking the ground details. I did not see the streak of light. And 2008, we had this beautiful wavy cross pattern, and then several balls of light. I have a few pictures of this. They were all in different places because they were all moving. And here's another one, real bright, glowing, energized, I'm sure. Another one there right in a crop circle, and more orange ones. This is a painting of that laying down of the crop circle at Oliver Castle, 1996, by the balls of light, showing them whizzing around. And as they were over that portion of the crop, it was laid down. Here's the finished pattern that allegedly, it certainly seems, the balls of light made. And then we've got balls of light up in the sky there over this crop circle. And here in a crop circle, a very interesting swirled center. Other ones coming along, really moving. They're dynamic. They don't just hover there or stand still. They move. This one in the sky over a crop circle. And here's that Oliver Castle one again with two balls of light near the bottom. And then I mentioned beams of light that come down sometimes right over a crop circle or even make a crop circle. We have farmers like this one who puts up what he calls a charity box. It's a little contribution box. And this little sign saying, "Welcome to the corn circle." They call them all corn circles. "We would welcome a donation." So a lot of the farmers are very happy to collect a British pound or two so you can enter the field, and we're happy to do that. Some of these crop circles predict astronomical events, like in 1999. This was a prediction of the solar eclipse that happened in August. I think it was August 11th that year. And this, the Shoemaker-Levy Comet series. This was the harbinger, the beginning of when Shoemaker-Levy Comet 1994 was actually moving across the sky, and it hit Jupiter. This was the first in that series. Then there was one that looked like the impact site of the comet hitting Jupiter. And then there was a series. There were 21 pieces of the Shoemaker-Levy Comet, one after the other. Boom, 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 over a series of, 10 days or 2 weeks or so. And each time a piece of the comet hit Jupiter out there on Earth in Wiltshire County, Hampshire, Sussex even, there were depictions of the same comet, but with fewer circles in its tail as each one hit. So here quickly are some of them. Lower right, you see one, and upper left, until all the pieces of Shoemaker-Levy had actually hit Jupiter, and then the whole phenomenon, including the crop circle following of that, was wrapped up in a circle. Then 2007, at 070707, we had this wonderful moon cycle pattern, huge pattern in Eastfield, lunar cycles, new moon to big, new moon to big, new moon to big, that summer. And this one, prediction of the solar lunar calendar and different events that were going to be happening in our sky. And this one, this is our solar system with the planets aligned perfectly as they will be on December 21st, 2012. How about that in a crop circle? And astrophysicist Rudy Schild, who's been a speaker here from Harvard, he studied this and he said it's impeccably accurate for December 21st, 2012. Partial solar eclipse depicted, paying the farmer to go into the field. Portals and wormholes, I'll have to be quick. Indications that we're being given that we can go through dimensions or go through space rapidly. Portals, wormholes, beautiful, incredible lay of this again and again and again, depictions of how, look at that, doesn't that look three-dimensional? How we can travel through space, how we can go into different dimensions, and this doorway into different dimensions. Silbury Hill. I'm going to show you quickly some ground details, how the crop swirls and curves around to the right there, and has a whole wavy pattern from one circle into the other. Swirled circle in the middle with the rest of the crop radiating out, a radial lay, and the smooth, perfect lay of some of these patterns. And this one, how from the center here, the wheat was like one stream of laying down into those side circles, swirling, coming out into the next circle. Unbelievable. And this one with a very interesting center. Hope you can see the way the swirls happen, one next to the other, to the other, to the other. And in some crop circles, it seems like there's a rippling of water, a beautiful water lay. And in this one, those smaller circles toward the center were laid down only halfway and swirled as a circle and not laid all the way down to the ground. I promise you there is no human being in the world who could possibly do that kind of feature in a crop circle. White horse. Okay, I'm afraid time is up. But I hope you'll visit the table out there and selling the Crop Circle book. You can ask me questions. And thank you so much. Blessings to you all.
Barbara Lamb, everybody. Barbara.
Thank you.
All right, as Barbara